everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Almost a year ago to the day I set off on a journey to do a circumnavigation of Spain. My wife, who's a very keen scuba diver, had decided she was going to go to the Red Sea for a week or 10 days, and I was left at home with nothing to do, which is never a good idea. So I thought, right, what shall I do? I know, I'll go to Spain. I wonder how Spain will be the end of November, beginning of December. And I anticipated it would be cool but dry, and that's what I was hoping for. So I booked a ferry, Portsmouth to Santander, return, and I arranged a route which would take in only Paradors. So I would only be staying in Spanish Paradors. Now, Spanish Paradors are, if you're unfamiliar, are buildings of historical interest, typically castles or monasteries, old hospitals, that type of thing, that are owned by the Spanish government, and they've turned them into fairly upmarket hotels, 3, 4 or 5 star hotels. And because of the time of year I was going, obviously I wasn't going to be paying top dollar. In fact, one of them, I can't remember which one it was now, but one of them I only paid about £65 for bed and breakfast. So I didn't spend a great deal of money because I didn't want to. So the plan was to take my Kawasaki Z900 RS Cafe and do this circumnavigation of Spain. So set off from Portsmouth from home to go to Portsmouth, and the ferry was leaving in the evening, can't remember which day it was, and I arranged to stop off at the Golden Lion in Winchester, which had extremely good reviews for its food, and it sure as heck didn't disappoint. In fact, I've eaten there subsequently and it's brilliant. If you're ever in Winchester and you need a nice meal, the Golden Lion's the place to go. So I got down to the ferry in Portsmouth. I was bloody frozen. It had rained almost the whole journey, and it was cold. I had heated grips and I had a heated waistcoat, but it just wasn't enough. It was a bloody miserable ride down, and I stopped off at the Golden Lion, warmed up with a hot meal, and then I had another 40 minutes or so to go to get to the ferry port. And when I got to the ferry port, I was shivering. I mean, it was very, very unpleasant. Not in any way surprising. There was only about 5 other bikes waiting to get on the ferry, because anyone else had been sensible enough to fly. Anyway, the ferry was going to take 2 days, and I had a good book. And I met someone on the ferry and we chatted for a while, and that was nice. And then we arrived in Santander, and we arrived in Santander fairly early in the morning. Now, I anticipated that I would arrive in Santander and it would be dry and the sun would just be coming up and it would be very pleasant. In fact, it was drizzling and it was dark. Even at 8 o'clock in the morning it was dark, which I hadn't anticipated at all. Anyway, my first night stop was in a place called Zamora. Okay, I will show you on the map later where I went, so you can see on the map. So the Parador in Zamora, absolutely lovely, as you can imagine. Really beautiful old building. Lovely riding, but cold. I mean, I had on the bike a temperature gauge. In fact, that bike actually had one on the dash, and I was lucky to see 6 degrees all the way down to Zamora. So over the Picos Mountains, onto the Altiplano, and off to Zamora. Next morning, set off, and the next morning, the temperature, on my bike dashboard, it was shouting ice because it was 3 degrees or lower when I got on the bike, and I wasn't anticipating this sort of level of coldness. I don't know why, but I mean, because it was almost December. But I suppose you think Spain, you think warm. But of course, Spain is a very high country. The Altiplano, which is most of Spain, is around 3,000 feet. So the idea of it being cold, should be blindingly obvious, really. Anyway, from Zamora, I went to Zafra. Okay, quite a long way down, and again, cold ride. It was only as I was approaching Zafra that the temperature started to rise. Again, lovely night's accommodation, beautiful building. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a castle, that one. But absolutely fabulous accommodation and brilliant breakfast. So that's the one thing the Paradors do, is they do a bloody good breakfast. And you can have almost whatever you want. You know, if you don't see it, just ask for it. You know, because they're expecting people to expect a lot. My sort of plan for my riding was to eat lunch. I prefer to eat lunch and not eat dinner. And of course in Spain you can get a menu del dia almost anywhere. In fact, someone once told me that it's a legal requirement for restaurants to offer a menu del dia, and I did go to a couple of restaurants on this trip that had no sign of a menu del dia at all, but I asked for one and they sort of begrudgingly said, all right then, what do you want? And of course they're only charging about €12, which is fantastic. Anyway, after Zafra it was heading towards Malaga, and of course Malaga is on the south coast of Spain, on the Mediterranean coast. Malaga, I mean, I know Malaga a little bit. The old town is absolutely beautiful, really, really lovely. The one thing that was of note in Malaga is that there's about 10,000 sets of traffic lights. You literally ride about 100 metres and you go to the next set of lights, and then the next, and then the next. And when you go down some of these roads, you can see these traffic lights ahead of you. There might be like 15 or 20 sets, almost like fairy lights, lined up in the distance, these green, orange or red, depending on what they're on. It's bloody mad. Whoever's got the contract for providing Malaga with traffic lights must be earning a shitload of money. I stayed in a beautiful Parador up on the hill. There are two Paradors in Malaga. One of them is quite modern and not far from the airport, and the other one, the one I stayed in, is an old castle that's on a hill overlooking the town. It was really beautiful. It was overlooking the town and the port, and I had a balcony that overlooked all of this. It was really, really lovely, really lovely. In the morning it rained overnight, and I was expecting it to rain overnight, and it had really, really chucked it down because I slept with the doors open because it was relatively warm. And in the morning I could hear this literally torrential rain bucketing down. And so anyway, I set off. It stopped raining by the time I'd had breakfast and set off. Just one thing to note in that Parador, because my Spanish is pretty good, I ended up with scrambled eggs and a ham omelette, because obviously that's what I wanted. That'll teach me not to read the menu properly. Anyway, I set off the next morning, and the next morning I was because the south of Spain is an area I know because I've lived there for a while. I was heading up to a place called Cadia. In the Sierra Nevada mountains in the south of Spain, there's an area known as the Alpujarra, and the Alpujarra is an ancient sort of badland where, when the Christians basically overthrew the Moors, who had ruled Spain for something like 700 years. And brought a lot of benefits to Spain. Spain was ruled before the Moors arrived in about 9 or 1000. It was ruled by these thugs, the Visigoths, who were just thugs, and they were all like separate bands that couldn't get on with each other. They're not unlike a lot of places today. But then the Moors came along, and they had art and mathematics and intelligence, and they knew how to do stuff. And so, of course, they sort of dragged Spain up, kicking and screaming by its bootstraps. And when the Christians overthrew the Moors, and their last bastion was in Granada at the Alhambra, the king of the Moors was actually banished to the Alpujarra region of Spain, and they turned it into a garden. They understood how irrigation worked and how they could grow stuff, and they terraced the land, and it's a really, really lovely area now, and has been for hundreds of years. So I was heading there. I was heading to a place called Cadyar, and then I was heading up into the hills to a place called Valor. But it's spelt Valor, and that's where I lived for a while. And I went to Valor, and I had a very nice lunch at the Avenue Mayor restaurant, and then I headed off, and I was heading towards Mojaca, okay, which is away on the east coast of Spain. And I'd never been to Mojaca. It was a long ride that day. It was a very long ride. I mean, not least because I wanted to go up into the mountains to areas I knew. But I mean, when I left Valor, I still had another 300 kilometres to go before I got to Mojaca, which was a bloody long way. I'd already done like 250 to get to Valor. Anyway, I arrived in Mojaca as the sun was going down. I mean, it was just dusk really when I got to Mojaca, and Mojaca was lovely. I didn't really know what to expect in Mojaca, and I'd heard sort of mixed reports, but I thought it was really lovely. And I walked along the beach. I didn't have any tea, any supper, because I'd already had a good lunch. So I walked along the beach a bit, about 8 o'clock in the evening, and I went to a bar. There was some live music playing, and everyone was going crazy for this live music. It was a thoroughly pleasant evening. The Parador was lovely, but quite modern. So then I left Mojaca, and I was heading up the east coast towards Javia. And Javia is again a lovely little cove of what was obviously an old fishing port. And my Parador was a modern one, but it was right on this little peninsula which overlooked the bay. I was on the top floor, and I had a balcony that overlooked the bay. It was really, really lovely. I mean, I'm sure some of the places I stayed, some of the accommodation I was allocated by the Parador, I wouldn't have got in high season because I didn't pay enough. But they probably thought, well, we've only got like 15 guests in tonight, so put them all on the top floor and let them have the view. So I stayed in Javia. It was lovely. I slept again with the doors open, and I could hear the waves breaking on the beach. It was a really lovely, lovely experience, and super comfortable accommodation. Then, of course, I'm heading north. I'm heading up the north, up the east side of Spain, heading further north. And I went inland slightly to go to a place called Tortosa. Lovely place. Stayed in a castle. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful location. Lovely riding. I stopped at a biker cafe on the way to Tortosa. I think it was a Sunday that particular day, and I stopped at this bike. I mean, I'd been riding through these hills, and I got to a point where I was coming out of the hills, and there was this pretty obvious biker cafe because there was loads of bikes there, and it was a cafe. That was what the clue was. And so anyway, I parked up, and I went in, and they were serving this incredible array of food, all freshly cooked. It was, people were loading up their plates with the most gorgeous things. Well, I'd already had a good breakfast, so I didn't need anything. I didn't need any of these tortillas and all the rest of it that they were serving up. Anyway, I got myself a coffee, and I sat down with this chap. I shared this table because it was packed, absolutely packed with people. And anyway, I got chatting to this chap, and he was riding Ducati Panigale. And he spoke a little English, and we conversed together. And at the time, I mean, it was lovely and warm. I mean, it was about 22 degrees. And I said to him, the weather's fantastic. And he said, well, it's not. He said, I'm only going to be out about 20 minutes because it's so cold. And I thought, 22 degrees. I mean, in England, we dream of this. We dream of 22 degrees and dry tarmac. But for him, it was pretty chilly. So anyway, got to Tortosa, had a lovely time there, and then I headed off, and I was heading off back to my last overnight, which was in a place called Santo Domingo de la Calzada, and Santo Domingo is a pretty ancient medieval town. It's got a really beautiful centre to it. Well, I arrived, because of course I'm getting into December now, I arrived and they had this Christmas fair on, So I got to the town and the sat nav is saying just keep going. Well, I couldn't keep going because the road was barricaded off. And you know, there were hundreds and hundreds of people all attending this sort of, it was like this medieval fair that was going on. So my Parador was right in the centre of the town, right next door to the cathedral. I mean, you couldn't have got more central if you tried. But and I needed to get there, so I thought, well, and I'd gone a couple of streets out of my way to try and find a way, and I thought, well, I've got to get there. You know, I mean, it's no good sort of thinking, oh, well, the road's barricaded off. I'll just park here and sleep under the bike. So anyway, I very, very gingerly made my way through these crowds and I mean, literally, it was like I was surrounded by people, and they're all sort of tut-tutting, thinking, bloody motorcyclist, I bet he's bloody English. And eventually I got to the centre and I got to my my Parador, and they said, you know, and I just parked outside, and they said, where are you parked? And I said, outside. And they said, well, you can't park there because the Guardia Civil, who I'd already had an interaction with, which I'll tell you about in a moment, they said that they'll remove the bike because there's no parking. I mean, if you park here, your bike will be removed and you'll probably never get it back because they'll sell it. So I thought, well, bollocks to that, I'll move it. Anyway, I went upstairs and I had a shower, and then they had a car park round the back, so I moved it around there. But on my way to Santo Domingo de Calzada, for those of you that don't know, the Guardia Civil are a throwback from the terrible times in Spain when Franco was in power, and they were to some degree the secret police. There's various stories that go around about them, but they were a pretty nasty bunch. And when Franco fell from grace and Spain became a democracy again, they didn't really have anything to do. So anyway, they basically ended up with looking after traffic. And they would very happily, and I know this from living there, they will stop you for no reason whatsoever and tell you there's something wrong with your car, and they want €100. Because they're not really funded, they're self-funding. So the idea is that they basically just fine people in order to pay their salaries. Anyway, I'm going down this road on the way to Santo Domingo de Calzada, and it's an arrow straight road, and I'm wanting to turn left halfway up this road. So I'm driving down this road, and the road, it was quite wide. It sort of split and created a lane in the middle of the road where you could go along and then turn left, and it had a stop sign, you know, like written on the road. So anyway, I got into this lane and I slowed right down. There was no traffic anywhere. There wasn't another vehicle in sight on this arrow straight road. Nothing behind, nothing in front. And I literally rolled over this stop line at less than walking pace and then accelerated into the road I was turning into. And that's where the Guardia Civil was. Stop, stop, pull in, pull in. The bloke spoke perfect English, and I didn't know what he'd stopped me for. Anyway, he said, you didn't stop at the stop line. And I said, well, there was no traffic. You know, I could see there was no traffic. He said, you didn't stop at the stop line. €100. So he filled in loads of forms, which were obviously completely unnecessary, and fined me €100. And then I thanked him profusely, and I thanked him again after I'd left in a different way. Anyway, he took my €100, the bastard, and it was all completely unnecessary. Anyway, Santo Domingo de Calzada, lovely place. Went for a wander round, bought some toasted almonds, mingled with the crowds, had a fantastic breakfast, and then, of course, my last night, and I'm heading back to Santander. And but I woke up in the morning and it was bloody cold again. I mean, it was about 5 degrees, and I went through some hills and it was really nice riding, but cold, you know. And then I turned onto this main road, and this fog, just thick fog, and I thought, Jesus, you know, I'm in almost zero visibility, riding a bike, and a truck could come along and take me out at any moment, you know, because I was on a big road. Pardon me. And I would say probably 30 minutes of riding like that. I mean, I was a bag of nerves. And eventually I went up into the hills and I cleared the fog. But very unpleasant. Very unpleasant. It's very cold in here, by the way. I'm heading towards Santander, and my plan is to fill up with fuel before I get to the ferry. And I didn't know, and I'd done about 170 miles already on this tank full, but I didn't want to fill up early. I wanted to fill up at the last minute. I ended up doing 197 miles on that tank full, and I'd never done more than 140. How I managed to eke out these last few miles, I've no idea. But anyway, I did, and I think I had something like 0.3 of a litre left, you know, based on what I put in it. Anyway, got to the ferry, 2 days overnight back to UK, arrived in the UK, and I got into the UK at about sort of 8 o'clock in the evening in Portsmouth, and it was -3, and I thought there is no way I'm going to be riding back to, you know, 170, 180 miles back home in this weather. So I booked into a Premier Inn, which was a bit of a come down from the Paradors, to be honest with you. But it was back to reality, really. So anyway, I stayed overnight, and the next morning, lovely sunny day, but bloody freezing, absolutely bloody freezing. And I got back home and warmed up. The bike was absolutely filthy. I mean, really filthy. You know, riding in the winter is not good for motorbikes at all. But and that was the end of the trip. It was absolutely incredible. I thoroughly enjoyed the trip. Absolutely smashing trip. Let me take you off of here. I put it on the floor because the last time I put it on the bike, it was a bit of a disaster. So, started in Santander and went round here to Zamora, so quite close to the Portuguese border. Then down to, where's Zafra? Zafra's somewhere around here. There's Zafra. Okay, so long way down. You know, if you think from Zamora all the way down to Zafra, they were big days. You know, it was big days riding. And then down here to Malaga, right on the coast. Okay, and then along here into the Sierra Nevada, into the Alpujarra, along here to Mahaca, and then up. This was shit. Absolute shit. Anywhere near Murcia is bloody awful. Massively commercial, mostly English. It's all commercialised shit. Habia was very nice, and then through Valencia and up into the hills for a bit, and then down to Tortosa. Then I went round Zaragoza and up towards Santo Domingo de la Calzada. And then my last bit was through the hills and up back to Santander, and that was the end of it. So a brilliant trip. I mean, apart from the cold and the slightly shitty weather, it was a fantastic trip. I really enjoyed staying in the Paradors. I really enjoyed the riding. Once I got down to sort of this area here, Merida, that sort of area, it was fine, and it was really fine all the way up to Tortosa, which is over there. It was just the last bit that was pretty grim. So that's it really. I won't put you back on the stand. Fantastic trip. Really glad I did it. I certainly would do it again, but I would do it. I'd probably go the other way round. And I'd probably go slightly earlier because then you'd have better weather. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you like listening to me talk. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. It's always nice to know what people think. Tell me what you've done. Have you circumnavigated Spain? You know, what did you think of it? Which bit did you like best? What was the weather like? Stuff like that. Anyway, enough for now. Thanks for watching if you've got this far, and I'll see you on the next one. So bye for now.